It was a crazy day, and I was sitting there getting ready like for our first take. And I just remember I was like, had this huge smile on my face, and I never competed at the Olympics. I was their team captain, but I wasn't able to compete because of my ACL. And I just remember sitting there on the day of set, and I was like, guys, this is like my Olympics. Hello.
Hi, Peng. I'm Adam. So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah. So this is about you, and I know you've had a whole life of in gymnastics and all of that, but
Mhm.
we focus on your music career, so I'd love to get your kind of origin story, and we'll talk about obviously the newest song and what you have planned on coming out in the future.
Perfect. Sounds great.
Sweet. So you're Canadian, correct? Whereabouts in Canada
Yes.
are you from?
Yeah, so I was born in Scarborough and then I grew up in Richmond Hill, so it's near Toronto. So I just say Toronto for people who don't know the
Okay.
small little cities. Yeah.
Very, very cool. So middle. So it's cold, right? You're
It's
middle of
cold.
Canada
Yeah, we're actually kind of
or
more like on
border.
the east side. I always say like the weather's kind of like New York. But
Sure. Okay.
yeah, hence why I'm out here in LA. It's
Okay. So you
nice
live
and
in LA now.
consistent.
There you
Yeah,
go.
so I'm based in LA.
Awesome. So, oh yeah, you did go to college in LA, right? You were
Yeah.
UCLA.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I go Bruins.
Very, very cool. So, as far as music goes, do you come from a musical household or a creative family? I mean, obviously, gymnastics is going to take a big part of your life story to excel at the level you did. But yeah, what about music? Do you come from a creative household?
It's so funny because both my parents are accountants. So it's like
Oh,
totally opposite. But then my grandparents, my grandpa on both ends, my mom's side and my dad's side, my grandpa on my dad's side was in the Chinese orchestra and he played the erhu, which is kind of like the Chinese violin. And then my grandpa on my mom's side, he used to write songs. So he used to go to this park in Toronto called Hyde Park and he would just write little songs about like, what he would see in like his day and it made no sense but he would just songwrite in the park and it was so funny because my parents were always like I don't know where my brother is also in music and we both have this creative side and we didn't really know where it came from but I think it stemmed from my grandparents and I always had an interest in music so my mom immediately mom and dad both saw me singing at like 1 years old. I would pick up sing to all the Disney movies and all that stuff so they put me in singing lessons really early and then also piano lessons really
oh,
early
okay.
on.
Wow, wow. So was
Yeah,
that something you continued to do? Like, I mean, alongside everything you had to do as far as your, workout with gymnastics.
yeah. It's funny because I was very lucky to have the time to be able to train and also have, my weekends off. And when I was training for the Olympics and being on the Canadian national team, I always carved out half an hour of my week just to do like singing lessons or in high school I got injured so I took a year off gymnastics and so I ended up picking up a guitar and that's when a lot of my songwriting started happening because I was like in my Taylor Swift era where I was like I'm gonna play guitar and sing and write songs and so it all kind of all started when I got injured more seriously when I got injured in gymnastics because I was picking up a lot of things that weren't physical. So that's when I started doing like a lot of acting and a lot of music. And I think, people just thought I was injured and just going to school. But I've always had this passion for music alongside when I was competing for the Olympics or training
Wow.
for the Olympics, sorry.
Yeah, no, wow, that's really fascinating. So were you
Mhm.
writing songs then when I mean you got injured that would sucks,
Yeah,
obviously. I mean,
no,
but to be able to then songwrite, do you show anyone these songs or was it just something you're doing for yourself?
it was a lot of what I was doing for myself, and it was really interesting because when I was even younger, before I got injured, floor music and gymnastics has no lyrics. There's no vocals or
Right.
anything. So I actually used to try and make songs to like the floor music in gymnastics. Didn't really turn out well, but like I was trying, like I always, just wanted to figure out how to songwrite and figure out how to write music. And I didn't really show anyone the songs. I think it was very deep and emotional for me. And sometimes I would want to write like, fun pop songs. And sometimes it was a very good way for me to emotionally release my feelings.
Okay. I love that. Well, with
Yeah.
okay, with the amount of time that you had to spend and how in you were with your training with gymnastics.
Hmm.
I mean, to get to the level you were at, obviously, but like to get injured, especially when you're in high school,
Yes.
I mean, that must have been traumatic in itself, right? I mean, were you thinking like, am I ever going to be able to do this again? I've been working so hard to do this thing, and now this is kind of on
Hmm.
pause. Like, what am I going to
It
do
was
here?
1,000% because when I was in high school, so I was a year too young for the 2008 Olympics. You have to be 16, and I was 15. But I was,
Oh, that's bummer.
I know, and I was ranking like one in Canada on floor and beam. So it was kind of like I was at that level to be able to. Have that projection to go to the Olympics. And I remember after 2008, I was in high school. I got a really bad back injury, and it wasn't anything that had happened in the gym, but I think I was growing and my spine was super lax. It was slipping, it was getting fractured, and so I was having issues like picking things off the floor. I couldn't go to the bathroom like without having pain. I would sneeze and just start crying because I was in just so much agony. And I went to the doctor, and the doctor pretty much like went to so many back specialists, and I finally found one that was like, you have spondylolisthesis and spondylolysis, and if you continue gymnastics, your spine could like still keep on slipping and hit a nerve, and you could become paralyzed waist down. So that's kind of how he laid it on me as a 14-year-old. And I unfortunately had an athlete in our gym who became a quadriplegic, and who unfortunately became paralyzed. And so that really frightened me at that time, and it was crazy. It was a lot to process as like a 14, 15-year-old, just to think that, one, I can't do the sport anymore. Two, he was like, you need to stop running, jumping, everything. Like, you can't
Oh
do
my
anything
god.
physical. So I had to relearn how to sit. I had to relearn how to like get in and out of bed. And he's like, you need to do this for a year. And I think honestly, that's where a lot of my discipline came from, because I was like, I want to get better. I need to get better. And it was, my parents were great because I was completely devastated. I'm like, gymnastics was it was my everything at that time, because I loved it, and I know I had a lot of other things outside going on, but it was one of those things that it was such a goal of mine to be able to do gymnastics. And I just remember my parents were like, well, now you can become a regular kid, like, do you want to pick up a guitar, and that's a lot of that was when I started heavily diving into music and acting.
Okay. Wow. I can only relate on this as I've had 4 cervical spine surgeries on my neck. I know what you're talking about with pain,
No.
and I
Yeah.
still like, yeah, like numbness in my hands here. I've had like uh 3 of the 4 surgeries were cord compressions, so I know
Oh my
your pain,
gosh. It's
and
brutal.
it is the
So
worst. When
brutal.
like I think you said sneezing. For me, it was like if I was driving and I hit a speed bump, that was like
Oh.
over, and sneezing, coughing,
Yeah.
like, all that, it was just awful, but, yeah, I
Yeah.
can't imagine being, and I mean, I was in 30s when that all happened, so I can't imagine being 14, 15, and then telling you
Yeah. It was
that
great. I had a
basically you
rolly
can't do any.
backpack.
Yeah, you can't do anything physical for the rest of your life. Yeah, like, that's
I
great, you've been
had,
doing all this physical stuff your whole life, but
yeah.
now you can't do any of it anymore.
Right, and I had like a pump up pillow for my back going to high school. It was like
Oh,
social. It was great. I was like, the coolest kid. No, I'm kidding. I had like a rolly backpack. I had like a whole transformation. Everyone was making fun of me for like my little blow up pillow, and they were like trying to make it, explode. I'm like, guys, I need this pillow for my
yeah,
back.
literally need this to live.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So with that though, I mean, doing all of that stuff, that did the doctor say if you do these things for this long, you'll be able to compete again?
No, he told me, he said, do this for a year and we'll see, we'll reevaluate. And so what had happened is when I was injured, like I just didn't have a trajectory. I thought I was going to go into acting and music because that was kind of the route I was on. I couldn't do anything physical. And so we
Mhm.
kind of X'd out gymnastics because he was like, you can't do this, you can't, like, I would just rule out gymnastics. It's not worth it, yada, yada, yada. And
Mhm.
then, so it wasn't even in my mind, but then one of my teammates went to UCLA, and then I met my coach, Miss Val. Well, I met her before, but I don't remember. I was really young. But she ended up like I ended up going to UCLA, and they pretty much were like, well, if you come back and do gymnastics, like we would love to have you. And I was like, oh, well, I thought I was going to play tennis now because like I can't do like anything physical
Right.
and or just anything strenuous where I'm like arching my back, and I thought tennis
Yeah.
and golf was kind of
Flips.
a little easier on my back. And I just remember showing me the routines that they were doing in college, and they were a lot different than what I was doing in elite gymnastics. It was there were skills that I could kind of get around to just reach the perfect 10 score instead of in elite gymnastics where you're throwing all the big tricks. And so
Ah.
I was like, oh, well, maybe I can try. And it seems doable because I'm not arching or bending my back in that way. So then I ended up, she offered me a full scholarship on the spot.
Jeez.
It was crazy because my mom and I were like, well, I feel like no other school's gonna take me, so I'll accept it. And so it was within that year, I had like 4 more months for my back rehab. I found a new gym, and it was a very slow process. I got an MRI, and it was one of those moving MRIs, dynamic MRIs, so you can
Yeah.
like hold different positions.
Hmm.
And they said that it wasn't moving. So we were like, oh my gosh, like the rehab was working. My back's like, it's finally stopping.
It's
It's not
fixed.
slipping. It's, yes, technically fixed. I mean, I grew 5 inches. So I
Damn.
was going through a growth spurt. I was like 4'7" in grade 9. It was really small. And then I hit 5 feet in grade 11. So I was still growing after that. But everything was kind of just slowing down. And then he said, you can go back to physical activity really slowly. So then I got back into a gym, and then I started doing things like very, very slowly, but my gymnastics changed a lot because I was so focused on my posture that I wasn't
Mhm.
bending a lot in my gymnastics. So if you are to watch my gymnastics, it's very straight bodied.
Okay, but that's interesting
Yeah.
that you kind of found this way where you're like, well, I could do all these things and still get
Mhm.
like perfect 10 scores. But it wasn't like at that point you kind of knew you're like, I'm not going to try to shoot for the Olympics this time around
I
anymore.
well, it's interesting because I got my skills back really quickly,
Oh,
and
good.
shockingly, after I kind of conditioned my new body. Since I
Mhm.
grew like a bunch, I conditioned my new body, and it took me about 4 months to get basic gymnastics back. But then afterwards, I was picking up skills so fast because I think it was just muscle memory.
Oh,
And my
yeah, I
coaches were
bet.
like, okay, you need to slow down because I think my skill level was higher than like the physical aspect that I could handle.
Mhm.
But I came back. My first competition was a disaster. I think I fell like 5 times, but I qualified to Elite Canada, which is like our halfway Canadian nationals. And I ended up winning that competition. And it was crazy because I was like, oh my gosh, maybe I can get back on the national team and really compete for Canada and have that dream again. So I actually had that in the back of my mind. I was just training a lot smarter than what I
Okay.
was.
Yeah, so yes, you had to change up your approach in that way.
Yeah, and so
Um,
I ended up training. I took a year off after high school to train for the Olympics. I was on the Canadian national team. I was, ranking the top Canadian at the time in 2012 for all rounds, and it was a really great year until Olympic trials when I was throwing every single skill that I wanted to. I was like going into that year with no regrets. Tore my ACL at the podium training, and pretty much was like, well, that definitely stung because I'd worked so hard to get back, and then I took a year off after high school. I sacrificed so much. I deferred a year out of my scholarship at UCLA, and it was one of those moments where I'm like, oh my God, no one's gonna want me anymore because I'm this injured athlete. Like, there goes UCLA, there goes my Olympic dream. It just felt like everything was
you're
kind
back
of
to being
gone.
14 again. I mean, with the same
Yeah,
similar, yeah, right? I mean,
100%.
and then, yeah, I can't even imagine. It's like, you're like, "I already went through all this.
And
I
then we
already
started
was,
writing
like."
music.
Yeah, did you start writing music again? Or were you always doing it in
Yeah.
between then?
No, I did. And it was funny because I just kept getting injured. Like it was rough. I mean, I think I loved gymnastics, but my body didn't like it for me, and I just couldn't sustain the level that I was at. And it was great because I'm sure if I looked back in like my little music diary and see what I was thinking at the time, I'm sure there's some interesting things from back when I
Oh,
was
yeah,
younger.
I bet.
Hmm.
So you were doing that at 14, and then once you get better, or once you're able to go compete, or then it's back pretty strong in the gymnastics mode, I would imagine. Were you still kind of writing songs at that point, still or just keeping it around? I mean, you mentioned earlier you kind of were doing something at least for 30 minutes or so once a week.
Yeah, so when I ended up
But
like getting back into training and when I was competing a lot, I always had Friday evenings off, and so like I would train probably till 6 o'clock, and then I would go to my 8:30 singing lesson on Friday,
oh,
and
rad.
then
Okay.
sometimes it would like alternate. So I would do like singing, and then the other week I would do guitar. So like I would kind of flip flop back and forth. But music was one of those things, especially during my injuries and gymnastics in general, since I was trying not to do anything more physical. It was a great way for me to get out of my head and not think about gymnastics 24/7. And it really helped me a lot. Like, even when I was away in competition, like, I always love singing. Singing helps me. Like, if you watch me on the competition floor when I was competing, I was always singing, dancing, like keeping loose. Because if I just thought about it and was too serious, I would get in my head and not do well.
Right. I mean, and especially in gymnastics, I mean, you can, if you get in your head, it's like you
It's
said, you knew
over.
someone that was a quadriplegic. It's like, yeah, it's real easy to
Yeah.
happen. I mean, I'm so always I've been always been fascinated with the gymnastics portion of the Olympics. It's still my favorite thing to watch because like, how
Hmm.
is this even possible? And it's like one little slip up and it's over.
Yeah, so
Um,
you have to be very careful. And I think mental health in gymnastics is so important. And, back then we didn't really talk about mental health a lot in the gym. And so I
mhm,
think for me, music was one of those things that I was able to like escape from what
utilize.
I was feeling. And especially when you're in the gym, you're kind of not trying to show emotions. Well, especially when I was training, like you go in with a good attitude. If you're having a bad day, you leave it out of the gym and you kind of come back to it. So it was a very interesting like training program that we were in, but I also think
Mhm.
it really, took me to where I am today.
Sure. Yeah. And so when do you start doing I mean, you put a song out very recently, but like
Yes.
when does music become something that you're like, I'm really going to go for this?
Yeah, it's funny because I would have little jam sessions at school. So at UCLA, like during exam week, I would invite all my musical friends, like the people in the dorm just on my floor, and they would bring their guitars. They would, someone had like a drum or a little like, it looked like a box, and they would hit it and sit on it. I don't know what it's called. But we used to have little jam sessions in the dorms, and so they had a recording studio on campus. I remember going into the studio and trying to write songs with my friends, and I've always had that interest, and I always wanted to take it seriously. I actually auditioned for this competition called Spring Sing, and you write your own song, you bring it in. I didn't make it, unfortunately, but I think the song was maybe a little too pop, in my opinion. But it was one of those things where after school, I was like, I want to deep dive into music. I just don't know how to get into it. Like, I don't know how to produce. I don't know how to do any of these things. But I met really amazing people over COVID, and it was through TikTok and some of it through CLA, just alumni. And they were just helping me a lot. And I really understood what it was like to get into sessions and to write songs. And, it's kind of, a collective team, and it was so much fun. It was so creative, and when I was in there, I'm like really intimidated at first, of course, but then I'm like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you've had, I mean, with the success you've had online, right, with TikTok and all that stuff, did that kind of start building over COVID as well? Or, I mean, you talked about the pandemic happening, and when
Yeah,
did that start to
I
work for you?
100%. I wouldn't say a love-hate relationship with gymnastics. I just had a love, all right, I'm ready to move on from gymnastics. Like, I always wanted to do entertainment. So when I was younger, I thought I was going to do 2012 Olympics, acting and music. That was kind of
Mhm.
like my projection. But then when UCLA came, I was like, oh, this looks fun. Then I kind of dabbled in that. And then over COVID, I was still very much seen as an athlete. And I'm like, oh,
Sure.
I feel like I have so much more to offer than just my athletics. And a lot of people were like, you should do fitness because fitness content, goes with your brand. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to work out anymore. I'm like, I worked out my whole entire life. Like, I've done so many hours a week of working out. I'm like, the last thing I want to do is work out and do a push up
Sure.
or like anything like that. Because I like the flipping in gymnastics. I didn't like the conditioning. So then that's when I ended up getting on TikTok because I'm like, okay, this platform is just for me. I'm gonna do my singing, my editing videos, like just everything that's fun for me. So I didn't tell anybody I got on TikTok. And I ended up just doing it for myself. Like I didn't share it at all. I was like, this is just for me. I don't think my parents knew, none of my friends knew. And it ended up just like exploding during
Flying.
COVID. It was crazy. It was crazy because it was like some people were commenting like, "Oh my God, like you can do the splits." I'm like, "Oh, guys, this is crazy. I made it out of the gymnastics like image, but now I'm trying to
Yeah.
like with music, I'm trying to tie both." I think after you do it for so long, you're like, "No, I don't want anything to do with it." But then I've kind of, come to the conclusion like it is a part of my life. I do love gymnastics and it's like a totally different way of giving back besides the physical aspect. It's like music is kind of my way to give back to the sport in a way emotionally.
Hmm. I love that, and I love the videos that like you have one with,
Those little
and
T-Fit, she's like my best friend
yeah.
from Toronto.
Oh, really?
It was funny because we grew up doing gymnastics together. So I've known her since she was 7 and I was 10. We literally trained together and grew up together.
I
Um,
swear she looks so familiar. Sorry. So, but yeah, so they're doing workouts to your song.
Yeah, so it's funny because I will dabble in the workouts every now and then. And it is fun for me, especially to do it with friends. I think if I was
Hmm.
doing it by myself, I'd be like, I can't. But I love doing it with Taylor. Taylor, she's a beast and she loves the conditioning part of gymnastics. And so it's fun to do it with her. And she challenges me in that way to kind of like get back into the physical aspect of just life in general. But
Hmm.
no, she's great. And it's fun to do different trends to the sound, to my song, and like see what we can create. And I think honestly, it's like the creative part of when we're doing the physical activity. It's like, okay, how are we going to create this little physical routine and then try
Yeah.
it?
I love it. As far as, I mean, I just watched the video too. I saw the video, and I know it's out now, which is awesome for the song "Pretty
Thank
Please."
you.
Yeah, the whole boxing scene and everything. Everything. I think it's really, really cool. Like, tell me about that video, and then I want to hear if you have any other music coming out soon.
Yeah. So that video it was so much fun to film. I had an amazing director. Her name was Vanessa Zamarripa, and she was actually a former teammate of mine at UCLA. And so she was a stunt woman, and I pretty much, I'd been in the studio writing songs for the past like 2.5 years and hadn't released anything yet. And I think everyone was saying like you gotta wait and like wait, and I'm like, but wait for what? And I'm like, I just want to release and get it started. And so I pretty much hit up my friend who was the director, Vanessa, and I feel like put the team of Avengers together. I told her, I was like, I have a low budget. It is fully funded by myself. And she was so helpful, and she knew a ton of people in the industry, and I can't be more thankful for them because they really came in and helped me out, and they knew I was new. They knew I didn't have the funds to pay them, and we worked things out with them to kind of make it happen. And so I really, give it up for Vanessa because she was the one who put everything together, and we really collaborated on what we wanted and visually. And she came from the movie industry, so we wanted to make it like a mini movie. And because it was my first like song and music video, I wanted to come out with a bang. I wanted people to take me seriously as a creator and artist, and not just think that I'm just kind of dabbling into it, but I'm like, no, this is something I'm serious about. And I wanted the choreography, I wanted the dancing, and the whole advice I got was like, well, those have budgets. And I'm like, I know they have budgets, and I have amazing friends around me, and we're all trying to make it out here. Like, it's hard. We're all trying to make it. And it was cool because I think the people who were working on the project who didn't have as much experience, we were all treating it like this was our project to showcase what we can do. And
Hmm.
as much as it was my song, I felt like it was a very much a team project that all of us could collaborate on. And that day of filming was so much fun. It was crazy work, like preparing. I didn't realize how much prep it takes to prepare a 2 minute and 15-second video or 3 minute video, but it was like 4 months of prep, and then it was location scouting, and we were talking with hair stylists, like, do we want a hairstylist? Like, should I do my own hair? And but we were like, no, we need this to be professional, and we wanted it to make it as great as possible. So we kind of got like all hands on deck. And I can't be more thankful for everyone who showed up, because if one person didn't and was like, nah, this isn't for me, then it wouldn't have worked. So it was a crazy day, and I was sitting there getting ready like for our first take. And I just remember I was like, had this huge smile on my face, and I never I never competed at the Olympics. I was their team captain, but I wasn't able to compete because of my ACL. And I just remember sitting there on the day of set, and I was like, guys, this is like my Olympics. Like, I feel like when I was younger, I've always had this dream of doing music. And I think the Olympics was one of those dreams that was kind of put into my head. Like, I was really good at gymnastics, and the coaches were like, oh, you can go to the Olympics. Like, let's train you, and you could be Canada's first medal. But I never had that thought, like, when I started gymnastics, like, I want to, I never watched it on TV, but I've always wanted to do music. And so I felt like this was like my Olympic dream coming to life. And it was so cool. Like, it was amazing. I had so much fun.
I love. It's funny that you said it was low budget, but explaining all of this to having so many people kind of help out, and you all get together to do
Yes.
this, because you watch it and it looks like a short film. It doesn't look like you didn't have anybody. You know what I mean?
No,
It looks
the
like it's
people.
put together by some
Yes.
money, but that's amazing that it turned out as awesome as it did.
Yeah, the people that we had are very, very professional. We had like Ben Grant on DP, and he had done like Jason Derulo, Michael Bublé, and I was like, are you sure he wants to be on this like low budget film? And it was like, I think a lot of people just understood I was a first artist and I'm new, and you have to start somewhere, and like everyone starts somewhere. And I feel like it was so cool. Like, we had Amanda McLeod on who was helping with production, and she was helping like get all paperwork, and I literally wouldn't have been able to do it without all of those people, and they were absolutely amazing. And the cameraman too, Mike Pryor, he's working in film right now, and so they're very well experienced, and I cannot be more thankful for them, because again, it turned out amazing. And we had our choreographer, Kiana Tangonen, and it was her first time choreographing to a music video. And so it was cool because we were all able to, like, the newbies and then the experienced people were all able to kind of come together and really learn from each other. But that makes me want to like help people in the industry who don't have the experience, to help them, because again, you can't start unless someone gives you a chance.
100%. I love that. I think that's awesome. Do you have other music that you're going to be releasing?
Yes, we have a lot in the bank, and I'm so excited. So I'm working towards an EP, and we have a lot more singles coming out, and I'm excited to share it because I think it will tell a lot about what my like gymnastics career was like, and also to I feel like when I write my music, I try to give off the energy, like not like I'm the shit, but I don't know if I can swear, but a feeling that I could never vocalize in the gym, but like you have to have that feeling when you're competing. So I also love the energy of K-pop, and I love the performance, and I feel like the music that I want to create is emotional but also empowering. And I love that for especially like the younger generation going in, and when they're not as confident, because I was not a confident kid. Like, I really wasn't. I was very insecure. I got bullied a ton. I feel like it took me a really long time to be confident in myself, because I just always had voices in the back of my head about every insecurity that I had on my body and my emotions. And so I want people, when they listen to my music, to feel empowered in that way, that they can do what they put their mind to, or even like just feel good. So I'm excited to share my music.
I love it. I have one more question for you before I let you go. Thank you so much. Thanks for doing this. This has been awesome. I want to know if do you have any advice for aspiring artists?
Yeah, I would say keep writing, do what you love, and share it. I think you never know until you actually share, and don't be afraid, because it's your life and no one can tell you what to do with your life. And if this is what you love and this is what makes you happy, then I say go for it, and you have my support. Bringin with that word.